Good morning from the Sarajevo funicular. As you can see, we are riding above the lovely town of Sarajevo up the mountain. So we had a quick morning of grabbing breakfast and coffee, and obviously we're on the funicular now, and our job today is to see as much of Sarajevo as we can. So we're going to go all the way up to have a good view over the city. Before coming down, I think we're going to take a look at the Olympic luge tracks, or what the remains of them are.
Yep.
And then we've got a tour scheduled later today that will go over kind of all the historical sites and kind of explain the downtown area before we have dinner at a super local spot that was not only recommended to us twice, but that Kelly had also found herself. So we're super looking forward to that.
Can't wait.
The views up here are absolutely incredible, but it's kind of crazy. One thing that we have been warned about is straying too far off of the actual trails. As you can see, there's a pretty decent trail that we're on now, but there's actually a ton of unexploded ordnance from the 90s war that is scattered throughout all the woods here that was going to protect the troops. They have not crawled through and picked those up, so we are going to be staying on the trail only today.
Yeah, the other thing that's a little concerning is there are signs everywhere to look out for, concerning snakes, so yikes.
Yeah, but I think we'll be all right. We're on a main trail. We'll try to stick to that, but the views up here are something else. They're really incredible.
It is stunning.
The 1984 Winter Olympics were held here, and so part of what we can see up here on this hill is the old bobsled track. So this is actually the start of it, and it goes that way. And we're going to walk along it for a while, but it's pretty cool to see something that used to be in the Olympics quite some time ago. All right, good evening. We just finished the walking tour, which was about 2.5 hours long, so it's 5:30ish now. And we've come back to the first spot that we toured, which is behind us, which is City Hall. Two quick things about the tour that I thought were really good was, one, we went to a lot of different places. It wasn't just an all history tour. It wasn't an all culture tour. It had bits of history, bits of culture, a bit of food. Even had a small taste of something, which I wasn't expecting. So I don't know, I thought it was really good.
Yeah, I think that was my favorite part too. It was we got to see the big sites and learn about the history, but also about the Bosnian people and the way that the different cultures, I think the Serbians, the Croatians, and the Bosnians have all kind of found harmony amongst themselves throughout the years.
Yeah, and then the second thing I really liked was it was definitely a small tour. It was probably 10 of us. Where you see a lot of bigger tours wandering around the city with 20, 30 people, which just makes it really tight.
Yeah.
But quick recap of kind of the city and what we talked about right off the rip. We learned 3 things that Bosnia is famous for. The first is the start of World War I, where Archduke Franz Ferdinand,
yeah.
was assassinated in the streets, actually just down that way. and we'll show some clips of like where that happened and stuff. But essentially, it was a plot by a young teenage group to essentially overthrow the Austrian-Hungarian Empire that was here, and assassinated him in the street actually after a failed attempt earlier that same day.
Yeah, and the Bosnians have since both found him as a hero and a criminal, so it's kind of gone back and forth over the years.
Yeah. The second thing was the Olympics were held here in 1984. And so it was the Winter Olympics, and it actually, I can see how it would be a fantastic Olympic venue. There's mountains like all around, and so all of the actual venues were like right next to the city, and it's not like, oh, it's 2 hours away is the skiing or something. It's all like right here.
Yeah, they pride themselves as this being the best Winter Olympics that's ever been held.
Yeah, so I'm sure that, they probably didn't have the grandest and the most amazing, stands and venues, but I am sure that it was truly incredible.
And during the Cold War, it was a neutral spot, so that's kind of why it was held here.
Yeah, and then the third thing was there was, of course, the war here, almost a civil war in the early 90s, which I think marks the city around. There's still like bullet holes in sides of buildings, like all the glass is basically new. And the city was under siege for over 1,200 days, so 4 years under siege essentially. So really sad to see. There's unfortunately graveyards just peckered with graves of people that passed during that conflict. But yeah, those were kind of the big three things that we learned that it was famous for. Yeah, and then kind of layering into the tour more so itself, behind us is obviously City Hall, which was originally a library. Going all the way back to the Ottoman Empire, I think, is when they first wanted to have like a city hall or something that you saw when you first came into the city and then left the city. It was unfortunately destroyed during the 90s war, so what's behind me is a reconstruction and is now part of the university. We then went over to the fountain. I think we talked about that yesterday, but there's a famous Ottoman fountain, which was like the center of the town during the 1600s. A lot of trade, very advanced city, had running water. And then where'd we go after that? We did...
I'm not sure. I can't remember.
We did a lot of things, but something that really strikes my mind was we went to Coppersmith Alley, and so copper, while not mined here, was a huge part of the city's history, and so we actually walked in a small coppersmith who's still hand making the copper, and kind of walked us through how he does that, and then she also walked us through how Bosnians do coffee. Which is very interesting, not something that I would have expected, but essentially they order their coffee in a very similar method to the Turkish, but where the Turkish put the sugar cube in their coffee, the Bosnians take the sugar cube, they dip it in the coffee, and then eat the sugar cube.
And then drink the coffee.
So they definitely like things sweet. But really interesting to see, and of course there's all the little Bosnian coffee sets that are sold around here, which would be really cool to have at home, but unfortunately we're traveling for a really long time, so that's not going to happen.
Yeah, and a lot of the rest of the tour was spent talking, amongst some other food things and cultural things, but spent talking about religion. So we went to the mosque, the cathedral, and the, not the monastery.
Synagogue.
The synagogue, thank you. And just learned all about the different religions that have also found harmony here amongst themselves throughout the years.
Yeah, and to bring that into a circle, the city hall behind me is actually a triangle. And so it was meant to house the three different religions in under one building. The Muslims, the Christians, and those Jewish, all in one building. And that's essentially how I think the government now is functioning in Bosnia. I am no expert. This is just a repetition of what we were told by the tour guide.
I think the government functions with a Serbian, a Croatian, and a Bosnian, and there's three presidents that all rotate through.
Yeah. But back to the tour, we also did go to like a super local bakery and had, I think, I don't know what it's called, but a small piece of bread. It's like a local thing. It was warm, really good actually.
It's kind of like the best breadstick I've ever had.
Yeah. And then we also swung by kind of I would call like almost like food alley. There's a bunch of local taverns all in one place, and she talked about the different foods that are really famous here. I think one is like a chabasi.
cevapi.
Cevap.
It's little meat pieces in the shape of a finger.
Yeah, and I think that they come with like bread and rice or sauerkraut or something. So I think we might actually give that a go, maybe tomorrow. But then we kind of went down Market Street a little bit, and she talked about how just in general this area was very prominent for in the 1600s and the Ottoman times, a lot of trade. This was not along the Silk Road, but I think part of where the Silk Road kind of came or ended. And there was a very famous Sultan's son who came here and actually founded most of the public buildings. And so there's one that is a reconstruction that has like a restaurant in it and then a small market area, where she was talking about for one night travelers could come here, they could eat, they could stay there, and they could, you know, visit all of the trading booths for free. And that was part of what the Sultan's son did. And then when the Sultan's son passed, he left all of the buildings to the Bosnian government. And the Bosnian government now rents out those spaces to different people, and anyone can rent it out. And they take the earnings from the rent and they provide scholarships to students here. So that's actually a really cool way to give back.
Yeah, I think they talked about that was part of the religion that the Sultan's son practiced was, you know, they didn't want to share money per se, but they wanted to help the public in their sharing.
Yeah, so I think all of those things kind of encompass the tour. So hopefully that we're going to overlay some videos, but hopefully that was a really good opening or like intro to Bosnia that we learned today.
It was a great tour.
Yeah, really enjoyed the tour. It was like a free walking tour, but obviously you tip at the end. But I think that was a really good way to spend the afternoon. We really enjoyed it. So I think, what are we going to go off to find a beer?
Off to the brewery, the Sarajevo brewery, which we also learned on the tour, the dark premium beer is the way to go.
Yeah, and last thing, I'm going to mention one more thing. There's actually a little building right over here, this one. And so this dude's house was actually back here, where they wanted to put City Hall. And so they went up to all of the different people that lived where City Hall was. They said, here's some money, get lost. This guy said no. And he refused to move unless they picked up his house brick by brick and moved it across the small river that's behind us. And so they did that, and the building now is called Inat Kuka, which is a little cafe, but Inat in, I guess, Bosnian essentially means stubborn.
Yeah, I think it was like the Spite House or something.
So his house lives on many hundreds of years later. But yeah, I think we're going to go get a beer. It's a little cold out today, too.
Yeah.
So. All right, so I was actually planning on cutting the vlog after our tour, because I was like, we'll just get a calm, quiet dinner. And we kind of did. We just picked this place. Kelly had done some previous research, but it's right behind us. It's called Klopa. Absolutely amazing. Like, once again, the food, the service, unreal. Like, we almost never get service like that at home. In fact, it reminded us of a bartender that we used to go to at a fireworks, and just how good the service is and friendly really made it a special meal.
Yeah, and it was a farm-to-table restaurant, so everything was local, fresh, right off the farm, and you could really taste it.
Yeah.
Definitely some of the best lamb that we've ever had, and just wow.
Yeah, we started with a crisp with a local Bosnian kind of tomato-based chutney, and then a piece of dried beef that encircled a piece of local organic cheese. The cheese was, I think Kelly described it as like a feta almost.
Yeah, it's like a smoked feta sort of.
Yeah, that was really good. And then we shared some lamb chops, which was the special for the night, and a pot of vegetables. The lamb chops were just so tender, so flavorful, cooked with fat on, and I don't know if you were supposed to eat it or not. We cut the fat off.
I ate the first one.
Yeah, but it was just really flavorful meat. Yeah. It didn't really have all that much else on it. It was just really good. And then the vegetable pot had a bunch of mixed vegetables from mushrooms, onions, tomatoes, zucchinis. It was just really, really good. So, top notch.
Yeah, and then for dessert, after dinner, we tried the local rakia, which is, I think, similar to a grappa, but it was apple flavored, and I have to describe the taste kind of like a grappa too, but not sweet or anything, but definitely an interesting experience.
Yeah. So now today's vlog is really long, but we had to talk about it because it was just really, really good. Very special meal. Really enjoyed it. But for now, we're calling it a night.
Yep.
See you tomorrow.